Welcome to Takeoff Talks, the podcast that puts you in the captain's seat. We break down the complexities of air travel, from your rights as a passenger to mastering the art of carry-on-only travel. Get ready for expert insights and strategies that make flying stress-free. Now boarding.
Another, then another.
And the crowd just thins out.
Yeah, the carousel groans. And with every passing minute, the realization just creeps in that your bag is not coming out of that chute.
It is arguably like the most universal travel anxiety we have. I mean, that sudden crushing loss of control over your own belongings.
It's terrible.
Right, you are suddenly marooned in a new city with nothing but the clothes on your back.
Well, today we are eliminating that anxiety entirely. We are turning you, yes, you listening right now, into an absolute master of the carry-on.
Absolutely.
We've pulled together this incredible stack of sources for this deep dive, going way beyond basic travel tips. I mean, we are diving into travel psychology blogs, global travel YouTube channels, tech gear guides from GearApt, and even those strict architectural specs from high-end luggage makers.
Yeah, brands like Carl Friedrich and Adam. And looking at all this data, what becomes immediately clear is that mastering this isn't just about, rolling your t-shirts.
Right.
It's a highly strategic exercise. It's physics, psychology, and, risk mitigation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we even get into the geometry of, fitting your entire life into a 22-inch box, we need to talk about the absolute non-negotiables.
The survival kit, basically.
Exactly. The items that must never, under any circumstances, cross the threshold into the airplane's cargo hold.
We really have to start here but we have to respect the chaotic reality of global aviation. Checked bags don't just get delayed. Sometimes they go on entirely independent adventures.
Yeah, they really do.
There is this bizarre but perfectly illustrative anecdote from one of our sources. She's a clinical psychologist who runs the blog Brave Wise Traveler.
No, the library book story. I read this in the notes and honestly thought it was a joke at first.
It is entirely real, and it really highlights the sheer vulnerability of checked luggage. So she was flying to Phoenix, right?
Okay.
She gets to her hotel, unzips her checked bag, and sitting right there, right on top of her folded clothes, is a library book.
Wait, from a library in Missouri? And she doesn't live in Missouri, nor was she flying from there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It belonged to a complete stranger.
That is so weird.
I know. What clearly happened is that deep in the bowels of some airport, security had simultaneously opened her bag and someone else's bag on the same metal table.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, they accidentally dropped this poor stranger's library book into her luggage before zipping it back up and just sending it down the belt.
I mean, it is a funny mental image, but the underlying implication is genuinely terrifying.
It really is.
Once you hand that bag over the ticketing counter, your belongings are essentially going on a blind date with the conveyor belt system. You have zero say in who opens it, what happens to it, or, what gets accidentally dropped inside.
Which brings us to securing your survival. Because if you lose your checked bag, the trip can still continue, but only if you have safeguarded specific categories of items.
The critical 5.
Right, the critical 5. Let's look at identity and wealth first. Passports, real IDs, physical visas, immigration forms.
Oh, and any significant cash or jewelry, right? Like grandma's ring.
Exactly.
But I want to push back on the jewelry aspect a bit. We constantly hear horror stories about valuables vanishing from checked bags. The YouTube channel Wolter's World points this out a lot. But are baggage handlers really out there running a coordinated jewelry heist ring?
Usually, no. I mean, the vanishing isn't always malicious theft. You have to consider the mechanical violence a checked bag undergoes.
Mechanical violence?
Yeah. These bags are subjected to immense pressure. They're thrown onto heavy-duty conveyor belts, stacked under hundreds of pounds of other luggage.
Wow, okay, yeah.
So zippers burst, seams tear open, small items like a ring box or a watch can simply fall out into the dark abyss of the baggage sorting facility, and you just never see them again.
So it's less about theft and more about structural failure. That makes total sense. But there's a blind spot here that I completely missed until going through these sources. Let's say you secure your identity and your wealth. What about when the vacation is over?
You were talking about the house keys and the car keys.
Yes. I mean, if your checked bag is lost forever, eventually you still have to fly back to your home airport. If your keys were in the cargo hold, how are you starting your car in the long-term parking lot at 2 in the morning?
Right, or how are you unlocking your front door? It's a catastrophic end to a trip.
It really is.
But beyond logistics, we also have to consider biological continuity. Medications.
Oh, right.
Our sources from Holidays of Australia and the financial platform Zolve are incredibly specific about this. It is not just about tossing a few loose pills into a Ziploc bag or a pill organizer.
Right, because if you hit a strict customs checkpoint, an unmarked bag of pills is a massive red flag.
Precisely. You need a few days' supply of prescription medications kept in their original pharmacy bottles.
And ideally accompanied by a quick letter from your doctor.
Yes, exactly. You are establishing a legal paper trail for your biology, plus some over-the-counter stuff just in case.
Okay, what else is in the critical 5?
Well, electronics.
Yep.
Laptops, phones, and basically anything with a lithium-ion battery. Now, airlines explicitly ban spare lithium batteries from the cargo hold anyway.
But why? I mean, is the cargo hold that much different from the overhead bin?
It is a matter of thermodynamics and accessibility. Lithium batteries are prone to a phenomenon called thermal runaway.
Thermal runaway? That sounds intense.
It is. If a battery gets crushed or shorts out, it can rapidly heat up and catch fire.
Oh, wow.
If that happens in the cabin, the flight attendants have specialized fire containment bags and extinguishers to deal with it immediately.
But if a thermal runaway event happens in the inaccessible, densely packed cargo hold,
the result can literally go down an aircraft.
So keeping your tech with you is literally a matter of flight safety. But let's add one more thing to the survival list. The backup clothing.
Oh, essential.
Yeah, always pack a change of underwear and lightweight sleepwear in your carry-on, just in case of lost luggage.
Absolutely. But let's play out the nightmare scenario here. You've packed perfectly. You have your identity, your keys, your meds, your laptop, and your backup underwear in your trusty rolling carry-on.
Okay, I'm at the boarding gate.
Right. And the agent gets on the PA system and announces that the overhead bins are completely full.
The forced gate check. It is the moment all your careful planning is suddenly threatened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They tell you that you have no choice. Your bag must go underneath.
So if you are standing there, you need a gate check protocol ready. You cannot just hand it over.
No, definitely not.
You have to rip that bag open in front of everyone and extract your passport, your phone, and your essential meds. Because once it goes down that jet bridge, it's gone until baggage claim.
Which perfectly transitions us to the architecture of the bags themselves. To avoid ever being a victim of the forced gate check, you have to master the physical matrix of airline rules.
Specifically, the critical distinction between the carry-on and the personal item. Let's define the parameters, because airlines are getting ruthless about this.
They really are.
If we look at the specs from a high-end manufacturer like Carl Friedrich, a standard European carry-on is capped tightly around 55 by 40 by 20 centimeters.
And don't forget the mass. European and Asian carriers routinely enforce a 7 to 10 kilogram weight limit.
Yeah, the U.S. carriers rarely weigh carry-ons, but internationally that scale at the check-in desk is unforgiving.
Very unforgiving. Now contrast that with the personal item, which is generally around 43 by 33 by 20 centimeters.
The personal item has to slide completely under the seat in front of you. But I have always wondered, is the personal item really a functional necessity?
What do you mean?
Like, is it basically just a loophole for people who want to cheat the system and bring a second bag without paying a fee?
What's fascinating here is the underlying economics and cabin geometry. Airlines are incredibly strict about overhead bin space because it is a shared finite geometry.
Right.
If your rolling bag is 1 inch too thick, it prevents the bin from closing, which delays boarding, which costs the airline thousands of dollars in missed takeoff slots. That is why they measure it.
But the space under the seat...
That is your least real estate. As long as the bag fits underneath, it doesn't impact the boarding physics of the aircraft.
That makes the personal item the traveler's ultimate secret weapon. So how do we strategically divide our lives between these two spaces?
Think of the overhead carry-on as your mobile closet. It holds your clothes, your non-essentials, and your toiletries.
Assuming your toiletries are under 100 milliliters in a 1-liter clear bag, of course.
Right. And the personal item under the seat is your active command center.
Your in-flight survival kit.
Exactly. If you are 6 hours into a red-eye flight over the Atlantic, the last thing you want to do is wake up your sleeping seatmate, climb into the aisle, and blindly dig through a dark overhead bin just to find your headphones or your medication.
I've watched people do that, pulling out sweaters and dropping socks on people's heads. It is pure chaos.
Which is why the soft shell backpack is the apex predator of the personal item category.
Apex predator, I like that.
Unlike a rigid leather briefcase or a hard tote, a malleable backpack can physically contort to fit whatever strange, restricted dimensions the underseat space happens to be on that specific aircraft.
Plus, it leaves your hands free for navigating cities or trains later. Okay, so we understand the spatial constraints. We have the right bags.
Yep.
But how do we actually force our belongings into these tiny boxes without ripping the zippers right off the track?
Here's where it gets really interesting, because packing isn't just folding, it's a battle against air and mass.
It is the physics of maximizing every square inch.
Exactly. The first great debate we see, championed by the luggage designers at Adam, is rolling versus folding.
I have to be honest, I always thought rolling your clothes was just a psychological trick or, a myth invented to sell packing cubes. Does it actually alter the volume of the clothing?
It absolutely alters the volume. When you fold a cotton shirt traditionally, you are trapping layers of ambient air in the creases.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, when you roll the fabric tightly, you are applying centrifugal pressure that expels that trapped air. You are fundamentally increasing the density of the item.
And it prevents wrinkles, right?
Yes, because there are no hard folds, you drastically reduce the heavy crease lines in the fabric.
So rolling actually changes the physical footprint of the shirt. And then we contain those rolls in packing cubes.
Think of packing cubes, like the long, straight blocks in the game Tetris. They give structural integrity to soft items.
That's a great way to look at it.
You can stack them flush against the rigid walls of your suitcase, leaving zero dead space. And for truly bulky items like winter coats or heavy knitwear, you escalate to compression bags.
You just squash all the oxygen right out of the wool.
You do. But our tech and gear source, Gear Apt, issues a vital warning here.
What's the warning?
Compression is a tool for spatial efficiency, not a license for endless overpacking. If you vacuum seal 5 massive wool sweaters, yes, they take up less volume, but you haven't altered their mass.
So you save the space, but you inadvertently create a 15-kilogram brick of a suitcase that you now have to heave over your head.
Exactly. And you will fail that strict European weight check instantly.
Right. If you lose at standard Tetris, the screen just fills up. If you lose at carry-on Tetris, you pay an exorbitant $50 baggage fee at the gate.
Precisely. And speaking of mass, where you place that weight inside the bag alters your entire physical experience in the airport. You must pack your densest items, your shoes, your electronics, at the very bottom of the suitcase right near the wheels.
To keep the bag balanced.
Yes. If you put heavy items near the telescopic handle, the bag becomes top-heavy. It makes the bag want to tip over every time you take a sharp corner sprinting to your gate.
That explains so much about my last trip to O'Hare. The bag was actively fighting me. And let's talk about hidden spaces. Those shoes at the bottom of the bag, you cannot just leave them empty. That is prime real estate.
It is a void waiting to be filled. You stuff your socks, your chargers, or your rolled-up ties inside the shoes.
Oh, definitely.
But the ultimate spatial hack, whatever your heaviest, bulkiest clothing is, the thick boots, the heavy winter coat, the scarf, do not put it in the bag at all. Wear it onto the plane.
Because the airlines don't weigh your body.
Exactly. You wear the parka through the gate, bypassing the luggage constraints entirely. Once you're seated, you take it off and save immense space.
That is brilliant. Now, what about the tech? Because if you look in my bag right now, it is a disaster zone of tangled white cords. It looks like a bird's nest made of copper wire.
The cable nest is the enemy of efficiency. The Gear Apt guide stresses that to streamline your tech, you must audit your power supply.
So no random loose wires.
Right. Do not bring 5 different charging bricks. Invest in a single universal travel adapter.
Like the Gear Apt Global Power Hub.
Exactly. A multi-charging device saves immense space. You pair that with a small modular cable kit containing only the exact connectors you need.
Okay, so we have hacked the mass and the volume. The bags are perfectly balanced and stowed. But now comes the real test. We are stuck in seat 24B for a 14-hour flight. A perfectly packed carry-on isn't just a transport vessel.
No, it is your mobile command center. It is your 30,000-foot sanctuary for mastering in-flight comfort.
Let's delve into the sleep mechanics, relying on the insights from the blog We Travel, We Bond. Because trying to sleep upright in a noisy metal tube is biologically unnatural.
It really is.
Let's start with the neck pillow.
We have to move past the cheap, inflatable U-shaped pillows you buy at the airport newsstand.
Right.
If you are sleeping upright, your neck requires structural rigidity, not just a balloon of air. Memory foam is superior and non-negotiable. It rolls to your spine and stops that sudden head-bobbing motion that jolts you awake.
The head bob is the worst, but what really caught my eye in these sources was the focus on the lower body. They talk about a footrest hammock. I can't picture how this works in a cramped economy seat.
It is a highly praised, lesser-known item. It's a small sling that clips onto the hinges of your tray table and hangs down.
Okay, and then what?
By resting your feet in it, you elevate your legs, improving circulation and acting almost like a recliner. Combine this with compression socks to prevent deep vein thrombosis and heavy legs.
You avoid getting off the plane with swollen ankles. Okay, so the body is aligned. But how do we block out the cabin?
Sensory deprivation. You need active noise-canceling headphones to electronically erase the drone of the jet engines.
But brave, wise traveler insists you must also pack a cheap backup pair of wired earbuds.
Because the Bluetooth might fail. Or the seatback screen requires a traditional 3.5mm jack.
That is a rookie mistake you only make once. Now, what about visual deprivation? I saw the sources emphasize a contoured eye mask. Wait, why buy a specific mask? The airlines hand out those flat fabric ones for free.
Darkness is darkness, but pressure is the enemy of sleep. The flat airline masks press directly against your eyelids. A contoured eye mask doesn't put pressure on the eyelids. It creates a pocket of empty space with zero physical friction on your eyelashes.
That makes so much physiological sense. And then the final step is creating what the sources call the personal cocoon.
This is pure psychology. You bring a lightweight travel blanket with a pouch or your own oversized hoodie. Then you introduce an olfactory cue.
Like a lavender or chamomile aromatherapy roll-on?
Yes. Applied to the pulse points. It signals the brain that it's time to rest and actively overwrites the sterile smell of the cabin air. Oh, and don't forget an empty collapsible water bottle.
To fill post-security and fight cabin dehydration.
Exactly. Plus hand sanitizer and wipes for those tray tables.
Okay, I have to jump in here and challenge this a bit.
Sure, go ahead.
I get the memory foam neck pillow, but an inflatable foot hammock, aromatherapy, a contoured mask, and a seatback organizer. Are we trying to fly, or are we trying to build a fully furnished tiny apartment in row 24B?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sheer volume of gear makes total sense. Think about a 14-hour flight. These tiny, calculated comforts are the literal difference between arriving completely exhausted and arriving biologically energized, ready to actually step out and explore.
So what does this all mean? When we look at everything we've synthesized today, safeguarding the critical five, manipulating the geometry of the personal item, hacking the physics of compression, and deploying sleep psychology, mastering the carry-on isn't just about arbitrary rule.
No, it's about reclaiming control, saving time, and maintaining peace of mind in a chaotic travel system.
You are no longer a victim of the baggage carousel.
You are not. But this leaves us with a final provocative thought to ponder long after you finish this deep dive.
What's that?
As airlines continue to unbundle fares and charge for overhead bin space, what if the future of travel phases out the overhead bin entirely?
Wow. Literally just the personal item under the seat. Nothing else.
Exactly. If we are eventually forced to travel only with what fits under the seat in front of us, how would that fundamentally change our relationship with consumerism, minimalism, and the way we experience the world?
That is a profound thought to leave on. The forced evolution of the global traveler. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you find yourself at the airport walking right past that crowded luggage carousel, just remember you have the tools, the physics, and the strategies to keep your journey entirely in your own hands. Safe travels.